All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Kidlit Distancing Social. I'm Laura Backus, publisher of Children's Book Insider and co-creator of writeforkids.org and writingblueprints.com. So welcome. We have a great guest tonight. Our guest Darcy actually reminded me as we were getting, connected earlier, that she used to write for me. So way back in the day. Because I have excellent taste in my contributors. So that was exciting. So if you are new to us and you want to get on our list to know about all our social guests and all the other cool stuff that we are doing, you can go to writeforkids.org/ultimate-cheat sheet, and you will not only get on our list, but you will get a free ebook, The Ultimate Children's Writing Cheat Sheet, where we have put 30 years worth of knowledge into one free ebook that will help you get started writing for children. And this is what we are celebrating this year, our 30th anniversary of being a publication, Children's Book Insider. It's our monthly newsletter. If you are not a subscriber, but you would like to be, we have a special offer for our socialites, $5 a month, writeforkids.org/CBI is where you can go to get that. You get an issue delivered to your email inbox every month. It's about 20 pages. Lots of market information, how-to info on writing for kids, information on the business side of publishing, interviews with authors, editors, etc. We also feature a special submission opportunity every month with either an editor or an agent, and you get an above the slush code to put in your submission. So as a CBI subscriber, your submission jumps over the slush pile, which is very cool. And our our CBI Clubhouse site that goes with it has 30 years of info on it. So you get a lot for your subscription. Okay, we have some great celebrates this week. As we do every week, we celebrate the successes of our members. So Susan Weaver-Jones found out that her short story, Little Lizards, will appear in Highlight's Hello magazine in May of 2021. So congrats, Susan, on that. And I know when you submit to Highlights and they accept your work, sometimes they hold it for quite a while before publishing it. So I know you've been waiting for that notice for a while. Good for you. Kathy Kretchting's picture book, I Love Camping, was just released. I can't talk, just released from Archway Publishing. Congratulations on that, Kathy. And I read the little description of the story. It sounds wonderful. So that's awesome. And Mary Pung writes that her story, Swift, Swish, and Swirl, which is about 3 leaves' journey through the seasons, will appear in Smarty Pants web-based magazine, Smarty Pants. That's a great little website that has original work on it for kids, and it has info for teachers and parents. So congratulations, Mary. That's awesome. I want to hear your good news. So email it to me at mail@writeforkids.org and put celebrate in the subject line, and we will feature you on a future Kidlit Distancing Social. And as I say every week, it does not have to be a publication. You could have finished the first draft of your manuscript. That's awesome. We want to hear about it and celebrate with you any step along the way. Okay. If you were here last week, I said that I am sort of trimming down the socials a bit, streamlining the socials. That's the word I'm looking for, because I know you're really here to listen to the guest. So these links of interest and things that I find from the publishing world, I will just put up occasionally if it's something that I feel is really, really cool. This does apply to what we'll be talking about tonight. So Jane Friedman has a wonderful blog, janefriedman.com, and she just updated this incredible PDF that is wonderful, and it explains your different paths to publication, the various options you have, and kind of how you get paid, and some of the things to watch out for in each of these options. And she put it up on her blog, and she said you can download it, use it, share it however you want, which is really great. So please go to her blog. The actual post is called The Key Book Publishing Paths 2020-2021. The article itself is very long and very, very informative as well. So those of you who are wondering what's the difference between indie publishing and traditional publishing, etc., this is a really great resource for you. So I hope you check that out. Okay, now let's get to my guest. Whoops, my chat box is doing weird things. Darcy Pattison has written over 4 books for children, ranging from picture books through middle grade novels, as well as work for adults, and 6 books on writing. She's a storyteller, a writing teacher, the queen of revisions, and founder of Mims House Books, which has published over 35 titles. Her work has been published in 9 languages with publishers like Harcourt, Philomel Penguin, HarperCollins, Arbordale, and Mims House, and has received recognition for excellence with starred reviews and many awards and honors. In fact, her newest picture book, A Little Bit of Dinosaur, which you see right there, which is due out on February 9th, recently received a starred review from Kirkus, which is a really big deal. We'll talk about that. She also established the Arkansas chapter of the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators and served as regional advisor for 6 years. So you want to check out her blog, kindykidsbooks.com. There's her website, all of her info there. She's very generous with her expertise, and you will learn a lot from her. So Darcy, welcome. Thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. It's fun.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
Great. Well, first of all, let's start right off. We had the question I was going to begin with, and someone asked before we even began, what is indie publishing? What is an indie author? And is it the same thing as self-publishing? Are these terms interchangeable these days, or is it something a little bit different from self-publishing?
Well, they're sort of the same. I'm splitting hairs when I say I'm an indie author. I do that partly because self-publishing has such a stigma still, that if I say I'm indie, then people pause and think about that a little bit more. But it is also slightly different because I do have a business structure. My company is an LLC, so Mims House LLC. So I do have a business structure, and I do in all ways act as a publisher.
Right, right. And to me, the way I've always thought about it is indie authors do exactly what you just said. You establish a company with an LLC. You have a company name that goes on the spine of your book, etc. Whereas self-published authors might use KDP, Amazon or something like that to create their book, but they don't go through all the extra steps of creating a company. That's kind of the way I differentiate it. I don't know.
I think so too. I think in some ways we're splitting hairs, but yes, right. I do take those extra steps. I do make sure that in all ways I act as a publisher. So it is different than just self-publishing. And the other thing is that I'm in it for the long term. I'm not doing one book.
Right.
I have a plan, and I work the plan, and I have five to 6 books coming out every year. So yeah, I'm a company.
That's substantial. It's very substantial. Do you think there is still a stigma against self-publishing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I wish there wasn't. But there are so many books out there that are self-published that don't come up to a standard that meets the traditional world standards.
True.
And that doesn't mean they shouldn't be published, and doesn't mean there's not a market for them. It just means that there's a standard that just doesn't quite come up to.
Yeah. But that doesn't have to be that way. I mean, your books certainly have proven the
Right.
naysayers wrong. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I think the challenge with self-published authors is they are responsible for every step of the process. And
Yes.
so that quality control, I think you have to be willing to hire outside people to edit and that kind of thing. Do you think that's important?
Oh, absolutely. I
Mhm.
am I am lousy at copy editing. I can write a story. I can do a reasonable job of editing, but I am not a copy editor in any way, shape, or form. So I have an excellent copy editor, and I'm always appalled at how many things she finds that I need to change.
Right,
But
right.
I just don't think that way. I'm not a grammar witch.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, and that's smart because that's a very different skill from
Yes.
creating stories and writing them is copy editing. Yeah. So you had a very successful career even before founding Mims House Books. You've been published by a lot of prestigious publishers. What made you decide to take this plunge into the indie publishing world?
Well, so I'll show you. This is probably one of my most popular books. This is The Journey of Oliver K. Woodman, and it got several starred reviews. It was reprinted in a textbook, so every spring in the third graders are reading this, and I get emails from teachers. And if you go on Teachers Pay Teachers, there's all sorts of activities about this book.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have, and I was the regional advisor for Arkansas SCBWI for 6 years, and then I did the conference for another 6 years. So yeah, I come from the traditional world, but there was a point at which I was writing stories that I believed in, and no one else believed in them. And I came to a point where I either had to quit writing because um, it's so discouraging to be told no over and over and over and over and over. And yet I knew that some of these stories were really great. So I had to decide, am I going to do it myself or not? And the
Mm-hmm.
world had changed. You know, Kindle came out, print on demand technology started, and it was possible. So in 2013, the Japanese tsunami hit, if you remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking for a story, and I saw the story about Wisdom, the Midway albatross. And she is the oldest known wild bird in the world. And she was on Midway when the tsunami hit. So the tsunami went towards Japan, but it also went across the Pacific. So the scientists knew that the tsunami was coming. So they went to the top of the third story building, the tallest building on the island. It's a tropical island, you know, sea level essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the scariest thing was that they could, it hit about midnight. They said the scariest thing was that they could hear the water coming in, but they couldn't see it. And the next morning, there was great devastation. Many, many birds were killed, but the oldest known wild bird in the world survived.
Wow.
So I ran into my friend who's an illustrator, Kitty Harville, and she loved the story, and we decided to do it. And it got a starred Publishers Weekly
Mm-hmm.
review. And when I got that, I thought to myself, I can do this.
Yep.
I can do
Yep.
this. I can get starred Publishers Weekly by myself.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never looked back.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So a lot of writers, when they're starting out, they'll get some rejections from publishers and agents, maybe even 30 or 40 rejections on a manuscript. And
Yes.
they'll think, I believe in this story, maybe I should self publish. You had already done a lot of work learning your craft and
Yes.
before you took this plunge. Do
Yes.
you and a beginner might absolutely do well with it, but on what are the odds that
No,
happen?
I can't predict odds. I mean, you just never know when
Yeah.
something's going to hit and when it isn't. So I talked to a dial editor one time,
Hmm.
and she said they had 25 books coming out that season. And she said, we know some of these will not earn out,
Hmm.
and we know some will hit. The problem is we don't know which ones.
Yeah.
If an editor working in the business doesn't know that, then it's up for grabs. So
Yeah,
then what you do is you publish it with the best art that you possibly can, and you try to get recognition in as many ways as you can, and then move on to the next book.
sure. And when you're starting out as a self-publisher or an indie publisher, do you have to be prepared to not earn a profit for a while or even lose money for a while? Is that something you just have to kind of be
So
okay with?
so here's the thing. If you are going to self-publish,
Mhm.
I am a publisher. I set up in my LLC, and I know that in America that most small businesses do not earn a profit for 3 to 5 years.
Mhm.
Most don't even make it past the first year. If you
Mhm.
make it to the third year, as a small business, you've done really well in America, that
Mhm.
you have a chance of making it. And so with that mindset, I just put my head down and worked.
Mhm.
I just put my head down. I worked. I had some income uh, from different sources that I could spend, and I just put my head down and worked for 3 to 5 years before I started turning a profit. And last year would be my sixth year, and I grossed over six figures.
Wow, that's wonderful. Yep. But you're also putting out very high quality work, which I
Thank
think
you.
is key, absolute
Thank you.
key. Yeah. So are there certain books that self-publishing might be a better option than other books, or is there a way to know?
Well, so when I think that I'm going to self publish a book or to indie publish a book, I'm
Mhm.
asking myself, who's the audience for this book?
Mhm.
Who would buy this book? And I know that I have a strong audience now in the science market, science teachers. I have 4 books that are National Science Teaching Association Outstanding Science Trade Books of the Year. So I know that they are already looking at my books, that I can submit for that award, that I have a strong track record and possibilities there.
Mhm.
And so science books, yeah, I'll do. If it's a reasonable science book and I can get a great illustrator, I'm absolutely going to do it. So the one that's coming out in February, a little bit of
Mhm.
dinosaur.
Yeah.
Um, this is just a really fun book written with my sister, which I don't, necessarily recommend, but she's a science teacher and has been for years. And that's a really great illustration.
Can you tell us the concept behind this book? Because I love it. I love the concept.
So in this one, a Tyrannosaurus Rex uh, skeleton is uncovered, and a calcium atom comes out of it and gets washed down to the Arkansas River, travels across Colorado, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and gets picked up by a water pump that irrigates a cornfield. And the corn is fed to the cow, and the cow then is milked and sent. The milk is sent to make cheese, and the mother feeds the kid a cheese sandwich. And so you have a little bit of dinosaur in your jawbone. And so it's just a really great story about conservation of mass.
Mhm.
Not that I would ever tell that to a kid,
Right.
um, but how things are reused over and over.
But it's also just a brilliant, just from purely the editor in me read the description. I remember that's the one that got a starred review in Kirkus. And I remember reading that review and going, what a great idea for a book. Because it's so kid appealing. The idea that you have a little bit of dinosaur in you is just perfect. It's such a great way of teaching the concept.
Yeah. So yeah. So this illustration is just great. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. That is great.
So when I'm looking for a book, then to answer your question is I'm looking for the audience. For
Mhm.
my fiction, it's a little bit harder
Mhm.
because those are middle grade students, and for those you have to reach the teachers or the parents. So I struggle more on my fiction, but I'm still committed to it, and my science sort of pays the bills. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, and I think there's with nonfiction, you can market directly to the schools and the teachers and the people who are going to be using these books. Like you said, fiction is it's it's harder to pin down
yeah,
sometimes who
yes.
your audience is. Yeah. Do you still Submit manuscripts to traditional publishers as well. Depend if it's something you feel they would do better, you just do all your own now.
No, now I do have a contract going right now with a traditional publisher, but it's a very, very unusual project. So I'm not against it, but
Mhm.
it has to be a very unusual project for me.
Right, right. So you talked briefly about the illustrations and a little bit of dinosaur. What are some of the things you look for if you are an indie publishing author or a self-publishing author and you are looking for an illustrator for your project? What are some a picture book in particular here, because that's a very specific skill
Yep.
for illustrators. What are some things you really need to be looking at? Not, and I'm assuming it's not your sister's best friend's son who is an art major who draws really nice
Well,
pictures.
I get pretty passionate about this because I think that's one of the big failings of self-published books is the
Yes.
art fails. And I
Mhm.
think first and foremost, you need to be a fan of great art.
Mhm.
Take an art appreciation class, or you need to know what makes great art. And so many times I think people just don't have that facility. And if you don't, then you need to find someone who does to help you. So I absolutely do not like mediocre digital art. And if you go to a place like Fiverr, that's what you're going to find is mediocre digital art. So instead, what I do is I go to behance.net, behance.net. That is Adobe's social media platform for artists. So Adobe is the program that makes Photoshop and all of the art programs. And people from all over the world put their portfolios there. Now, they're not just children's books, they'll put portfolios for business things like making cards or logos, things like that. So you have to really look to find some really great art. But I find amazing artists there. That's how I found John Joven, who is from Colombia. And I found Peter Willis, who's now done 6 books with me. And these are the books that are winning awards. He is from Great Britain. I find amazing artists there. So what it means is Fiverr is just so easy because you just do this little contract on Fiverr and
Right.
it's just easy. But when you go to Behance, then what you have to do is you have to negotiate yourself. You have to contact them. You say, I have this project. Would you be interested? Let's talk about price. Let's talk about the scope of the project, how long it might take, that sort of thing. So it's
Yeah.
more work on my end, but I come up with this kind of art that gets starred Kirkus reviews,
Yes.
or this kind of art that gets starred Kirkus reviews and a junior library guild selection and many other awards. Yeah,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
get great artists.
Wow. So that was behance.net. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes.
behance.net. People are asking in the chat
Yes.
box. Okay, that's great.
behance.net. And
Mhm.
again, you have to work harder.
Yeah.
Um, it's not set up to do the simple stuff like Fiverr, but you don't get that digital mediocre art that
Yeah.
Fiverr is. Yeah.
So I'm not going to ask you specific details here of what you pay your illustrators, but is there a range that people should be expecting to pay for good art for a picture book?
So this is one of the hardest questions ever, and I can't answer that specifically, but I don't pay as much as I would like to pay. I don't pay near what they deserve, but I pay what my budget allows.
Sure.
So I set up a budget, and then I say to an illustrator, this is my budget. Can you do it or not? And they
Mhm.
say no. I say, thank you. I appreciate, your professionalism. And I move on to the next person that I've identified that may be a possible candidate for doing my book. And what
Right.
I find is that I wind up a lot of times working with people that this is their first book, and they are
Mhm.
willing to take less for a first book because they want that first book,
Right.
like
Right.
everybody else, they want that first
Mhm.
book. And that also means that then I'm working harder as an art director to tell them how to do this. Some of them don't know that picture books are generally 32 pages. They don't
Mhm.
know some of those basic things, but I'm confident that I can work with them to get it there.
Mhm. Mhm. Great, great. And those of you, I just put in the chat box that website, behance.net. People were still asking. I think you just have to, like you said, do the work and be upfront with what you can pay and what you expect, and Just go from
And
there.
yeah,
Yeah.
you just go from there. I mean, you set a budget and you just go, this is what I can pay, and don't get tricked into paying more. Like I know some people that I've worked with. I've taught self-publishing at the Highlights Foundation, and some of those people, you know, get some sketches from somebody and they think they owe them a contract just because they've gotten sketches. No,
Right.
if you're not happy with those sketches, you don't owe them a contract.
Mm-mm.
You know, if the sketches are on speculation,
Mm-hmm.
um, and and then they work with them, you know, go, well, let's try revising it a little bit. And if it's not right, it just doesn't turn out right, and then you need to cut them loose. You know,
Right.
it's just hard to do, but
Yeah.
your
Well, and
picture book demands great art or it will not sell.
it does. Exactly. Exactly. And that's often what draws a customer to the book in the first place is the cover
Yes.
and the illustration on the cover
Yeah.
and the title. I always think
Yeah.
the title's so
So
important.
this series, the Moments in Science series, is about moments in history when science sort of changed the world. It
Mhm.
sold a 4-book contract to China, and the Chinese editor said the first thing she looks at is the art. So
Mhm.
even in international deals, they're looking at the art.
Yep. Yep. Great. Well, the art is stunning on your books. You did a great job. Let's see. So let's talk a little bit about marketing, which is I think often the hardest part for a lot of indie publishers. And it's not that marketing is that hard. It's just it's something you have to do. It's work. It can be very time consuming. But you have been successful in getting starred reviews of your books. So to have somewhere like Kirkus even read your book as an indie publisher, I think is a big accomplishment because for a very long time they would not look at.
Okay, so what I do is I do the Kirkus Indie program, so I pay $350 to get that review.
Okay, okay,
Okay.
which people need to know about, and that
Yes.
doesn't mean and that's
So
totally
when I
cool.
first started 6 years ago, I could get reviews from School Library Journal and Book List. Now I can't. For some reason, even though I'm pretty successful and the
Yeah.
books are winning other awards, they have cut back where they will not review. And I understand part of it, they're very busy and there's just so many self-published books out there that they cannot do all of them.
Sure.
I still don't quite understand it, but the only place I can reliably get a review is Kirkus. And for that, I pay $350, but I do it because my market is schools and libraries, and I know it. And
Mhm.
they want those reviews. And if Kirkus is the only one I can reliably get, I have to have it.
Mhm.
You know, if you are publishing adult thrillers, no, don't get a Kirkus. There's no reason to.
Right.
Right.
Well,
But
and and it's still a legit review because you pay
yes,
the money, but you don't know if they're going to review your book well. You
absolutely.
know,
Yes. Yeah.
so yeah.
They do review it. They, for the money, they will review it. They will read it and review it. That doesn't guarantee anything else. Yes.
Mhm. Right. Right.
Yes. But then beyond that, what I've done for the last 6 years is work very, very hard to get distribution in the school and library market. So my books are distributed by Follett, which does about half of the school and library market. Mackin is another big educational distributor. I go with them. Permabound will distribute my books. And then I've worked very hard lately to get other distribution for digital and audio. So right now, Junior Library Guild, because I have 2 books that were Junior Library Guild, they picked me up my books for their digital platform that they just started this year. And that's been going really well.
Mhm.
Tales to Go is another place for audio. In other words, what I'm doing is I'm sort of casting a wide net and I just listen all over the place that I can. I'm on a librarians listserv. I read the PW. I read all kinds of things on Facebook and blogs and things. Jane Friedman.
Mhm.
I read really widely. And when I hear anything about any new distributor or anybody doing really well in children's books, man, I'm there.
Right.
And I'm saying, hey, look at my books. Would you like to carry my books? And so one of the main things I do is when I have a new book come out, my marketing is to let all my partners, all of these education distributors know I have a new book out. And by the way, it's got, you know, it's got the star Kirkus.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
pay attention.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Great,
The
great.
other thing I did was, as a publishing company, I joined the Children's Book Council. And by doing that, then I have access to those awards for teachers. So the social studies outstanding trade book, the science outstanding trade book, there's a mathical award, all of those awards.
Mm-hmm. Great, great. And people are asking about the list of distributors, etc. We have one of our writing blueprints is called Self-Publishing Blueprint that takes you step by step through the whole process and talks all about this stuff.
Great.
And on the replay, we'll have a link to that, so you can check that out if you want.
Great.
But I think reading Publishers Weekly is so important, and that's where you're getting a lot of names of these distributors and review
Yes.
outlets, that kind
So
of thing.
about 3 years ago, I read a report in Publishers Weekly that the EPIC app, EPIC exclamation
Right.
point, was very, very popular in schools. And
Mhm.
so I talked to them, and they carry my books.
Mhm.
So that's the sort of thing I'm doing.
Yeah, great, great. Okay, well, I am going to pull up some questions here. Please open the question box. Here.
I'm just going to close it, and then now I just minimized it and now restart it. Just Alt tab.
What are you? Sorry, John's here. We're trying to do something.
Technical support. Well,
Great.
go back to Zoom. There you go.
I don't. Sorry, people. There we go. Okay.
Yeah.
Check it. Looks okay on your end.
Okay.
Okay. So, Patricia asks about graphic design and printing. Do you hire people to do the graphic design on your books? And people need to know that illustrations are different from graphic design. There's still a whole layout component that goes into any book, whether it's illustrated or not.
Yes.
So is that
So
something?
I hire illustrators, but I do a lot of the graphic design myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
And
if you're good at that, great. Then you can do it yourself, but you need to also understand your own talents. In case you're not as good at it, you should definitely outsource that.
Absolutely.
Okay. Oh, Carol just wants to say thank you for your great advice in your class at Highlights in 2017. She's now a self-published author with her own company thanks to your guidance.
Thanks, Carol. You were great too.
Anita's wondering about some suggestions about locating coaches for successful indie authors. So,
do you have any advice on that?
Yeah. Do I have any advice? Well, Anita, by a coach, do you mean someone to kind of walk you through the whole process, or are you looking specifically for copy editors, developmental editors, that kind of thing? I have a list of editors I can certainly recommend as far as who are very good as far as helping develop and perfect your manuscript. As far as someone to coach you through the whole process, our self-publishing blueprint, our instructor for that, Teresa Funk, has also worked as a book coach. So again, we will give you that link with the replay.
Right. Yeah, I do not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Stan says, I have several books published, all how-to, such as photography and electrical engineering, and he wants to branch out to children's books and needs some advice as to how to proceed. So Stan, if you could clarify that for us, are you looking at self-publishing your children's books or submitting traditionally?
Probably first and foremost, though, either direction is learn to write for children. It is something very different and very special. It's not just writing a story. Children's writing demands that you pay attention to that audience. So that's the most important thing.
Terrific. Yes. And again, on our Writing Blueprint site, we have lots of the writing blueprints walk you from idea through finished manuscript for different age groups. So you can check that out, and we have free trial editions of all our blueprints that you can check out, and we'll put that link on the recording as well, just because. Okay. someone here, PW, asked, do you publish other people's work at Mim's House or just your own?
Just mine, except this one's with my sister.
Okay. Yes. Well, considering you're doing 5 or 6 books a year, that's plenty,
Yeah.
for one person to do.
Yeah.
You don't need more people's books under contract as well. Let's see what else. Here we got lots. Do you speak at K to 12 science educator conferences? Is that something that you do as part of sort of your marketing of
Yeah.
your books?
So I went last year. I went to the National Science Teachers Association conference. It was in St. Louis, and they had a special session for authors of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math books. And I was on that panel, and I was scheduled to go back this year, but COVID sort of put that
Right.
in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that is a really good good place for writers of nonfiction.
Yes. Yes.
To
or if you have social studies books, go to the social studies teachers. I've also gone to the NCTE, the National Council of Teachers of English Conference, because one of my books won one of their awards. So all of those sorts of conferences are great to go to and meet the teachers and build your reputation.
Now, when you go to conferences like that, do you go just and to network, or do you sit on a panel or do a presentation?
Oh, I won't go unless I'm on a panel. Yeah. And sometimes they have big audiences and sometimes not so big, but I want an audience of some kind. Sure. And then networking is wonderful. Yeah, absolutely.
So to get on a panel for those things, do you usually go to the conference website and see if they're looking for panelists?
Well, so like the NCTE just put out a call. They are looking for proposals for their conference for next year. And so you could do that. Also, if you win an award, then usually there's some sort of presentation where they're going to talk about those awards. Yeah, so this one was the NCTE notable children's book in children's literature. Yeah.
Terrific. Okay, so Susan, again, that website for the art is behance.net. I put a link in the chat box, but we will also put it with our
so replay. Some of the people on Behance have agents and some don't. It just depends, and you'll find people there from all over the world.
Great.
You have to do a lot of searching to find the right people, but they're there.
Terrific. Do you, when working with an illustrator, do you give them any sort of guidelines, or do you let them read the manuscript and come up with their own interpretation first? How do you work?
Yes, I do let them come up with their own interpretation. I do think that if you're hiring a professional illustrator, they should have their input into the art. And I may have some suggestions. So for example, on this book, this is the story of a fake news story. So the guy who created the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade balloons floated a sea monster balloon off Nantucket Island. And on this one, I knew that I wanted there to be a really great page turn. So one of the things you talk about when you're writing a children's book is page turns. So there's all this, like a lot of text on this page, but on the next page is just an illustration. And I knew I wanted that sea monster blown up really, really big. So sometimes I will tell them, and this is a really great spread when you're reading it to kids, they kind of gasp at it. They don't know quite what they're looking at. And then the next page, he pulls back and you can see that it's actually a balloon. Okay. And so I knew I wanted that page. So sometimes I will tell them things like that, but generally I let them come and say, so I do it in 2 phases. They have to give me sketches and then I approve the sketches and then they go to color. Right. So in that sketches phases, we go back and forth to make sure it's right.
Terrific. Which is just how an illustrator would work with a traditional publisher as well.
Sure.
Okay, do you do your books in hardcover and paperback, or just hardcover, or what? How?
So I use Ingram. I use Ingram, which does hardcover and paperback. Yes, okay. And I find that I sell about 25% hardcover. Let's see, 25% hardcover, 25% ebooks, and 50% paperback.
And really, if you want to get your book into schools and libraries, you need to have that hardcover, right?
Absolutely.
They
Yes.
won't buy paperback.
Yeah. Yeah. And print on demand, the prices are terrible, but they still will buy it. So,
Yeah. Okay. What about copyright with the illustrations? Does the illustrator retain copyright, or do
it's all in
you?
the contract.
Mhm.
So you write a contract. I write contracts for them. I consulted with a literary lawyer and came up with a contract that I'm comfortable with. And then you say, "This is my contract. Would you sign it or not for this amount of money?"
Right.
It's really is a business deal, and you just go into it not apologizing, not
Mhm.
saying, "Oh, I know this isn't quite what you." No, you just say, "This is what I have. So, are you interested or not?" And they'll say
Mhm.
yes or no.
Yeah, great. And by the way, we do have a publishing lawyer coming on as a guest
Right.
in about 3 weeks on the social distancing social. So any of you who have those types of questions you want to bring to that as well, she can answer those. Okay. Oh, we're getting technical here. Patricia, would you recommend overseas offset printers or domestic printers? What would be a safe short run to sell at book fairs, farmers markets, etc.? Patricia, you have done your research.
And so what I'll say is I did a blog post about this. Go to indiekidsbooks.com. And
Great.
there is a post there about should you do offset printing overseas or should you do print on demand? And it talks about a lot of those issues. And I really think that's probably the best place for you to go and look at it. Yeah.
That's terrific.
And
Yes.
for farmers markets, there's no way there's no way to guess how much you'd sell.
Yeah,
Now,
that's
you're
true.
just gonna have to try something.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And really, yeah, something like a farmer's market, it's not going to cost much to get a table there. You could try it, see what happens. I imagine depending on your book, if it's like a holiday themed book and they're having a holiday craft market, you might sell more. You just never know.
Sure.
Great. Let's see. Oh, have you translated books into other languages? So your books, you've been published in 9 languages. Are some of those books that you've had translated?
So most of them, let's see, like 6 of them were with traditional publishers. But I just sold a 6-book deal to Korea, a 4-book deal to China. And then the Nantucket Sea Monster is also in Korean.
Uh-huh.
And I have done 1 book in French. I did this book in French, but it's because we had a French exchange student that lived with us for a year, and she said that she would work with me on it. And so it's called Cling in French instead of Clang. It's about sound, basic sound science. So I have done 1, but it's not done very well, and I won't do more. But if another international publisher comes and asks me if I'll sell translation rights, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Terrific. So you sell the rights to the publisher and then they deal with the translation. They publish it in their country.
Yeah.
It's a foreign rights deal. So do you negotiate all of those personally, or do you hire an agent to negotiate those things on your behalf with the foreign
Right now, I
publishers?
have an agent for the Asian market. I don't have one for the European market, but the Asian market is working really well for me, and they do an amazing job. Yeah.
Mhm. Great.
Yeah.
So any of you, when you get to that point in your indie publishing career, you can hire agents in foreign countries to sell
Yeah.
books to those publishers or to handle the foreign markets for you,
Yes.
which is a good thing. What about book clubs? Did you sell directly to them? You said,
So I do have some books in not book clubs, but subscription box services.
Hmm,
That's kind of the new thing these days. And I do
okay.
have one that does very well there. No, actually 2 that do very well there. So I'm looking for lots of markets. I saw somewhere else someone is asking, do I get my books into brick and mortar stores? And I really could care less.
Mhm.
My job is not to put books on a shelf in a bookstore. My job is to sell books. And so I find everywhere that I can sell books. I'm not against bookstores. Please sell my books.
Yeah.
But I find that I can get recognition and some traction in other places much easier.
Mhm. Great. Great. Let's see what else here. Before submitting, presenting your manuscript to the illustrator, do you determine where the page breaks are going to go, or do you kind of let them look at it first?
It just depends on the book and the manuscript. I mean, sometimes I have an idea, like I knew I wanted that full spread of just the sea monster, but sometimes no, it just depends. I'm always thinking about page turns though, because that's a really important part of writing children's books is those page turns.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Stan is asking, what is a subscription service?
Subscription box service, that's like little passports. Will you pay a fee every month, and then your kid gets a book about a different country, or if you buy a box that's STEM books, they'll get a STEM book every month.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of those now. They've proliferated the last 3 to 5 years. So
That's great. And that's a great, so if your book is carried by them, then it gets sent out to the people who subscribe. Yeah. That's wonderful. Okay, so maybe you could reiterate on this just a little bit more. Terry asks, how do you sell the books? The mechanics of selling sound intimidating, if not through a store. Well, first of all, you have distributors
yes,
who do the selling for you,
yes.
which is important. They
Yeah,
do all.
so if you publish through Ingram and KDP, then they're automatically on Amazon. Amazon will sell your books for you. When I list my books through Follett or Mackin, they're not actually buying books from me. What they're doing is they're listing them, and then they will acquire them from Ingram wholesalers. So I don't have to touch a book. When you do print on demand, it's very smooth and easy.
And again, our self-publishing blueprint does walk you through these steps, because there's a lot of options when you are self-publishing as to how you're going to get your book out there, and you can decide what works for you. But yeah, print on demand has really changed things. You don't have to print 4,000 copies or 10,000 copies of your book and stick them in your garage and then roll them out, which is wonderful.
I would never be able to publish as many as I have without print on demand.
No. And the quality of print on demand is good. I mean, I remember when it first started, you could kind of tell it wasn't quite as good, but it's really quite nice.
Very, very good. I think the blacks are probably the weakest, but it's very good. Nothing's going to match offset printing. That is the gold standard, but still, for the price points, it's very good.
Terrific. Well, Darcy, I'm going to give you an opportunity to give us any last bit of advice or wisdom that you might want to share for anybody who's considering self-publishing.
It's not for the faint-hearted. And remember what I said, that you are a small business, and most small businesses do not make a profit for the first 3 to 5 years. So you've got to have some way to sustain yourself for a while before you start turning a profit. You can't go full-time unless you're willing to take on a big debt. You just can't. And then I come from the traditional world. I grew up through the SCWI. I firmly believe the most important thing is to write a great story. I cannot tell you how important that is. If you don't know children's literature, what I tell people is go to Barnes & Noble. You can't do that, I guess, these days, and read 100 books that were published within the last 5 years. Don't rely on what were your childhood favorites. You must learn to write for kids. And if you can't take the time to do that, you're not going to succeed. It is a different beast. It's not just writing, an essay or, it takes a lot. And I still have, after 50 books, I have a critique group that will meet tomorrow, and they will tear my stuff apart, and I'll cry and I'll rewrite it. Absolutely. Rewrite, polish, get the words right.
That is so, so true. I want to also let everybody know that Darcy is doing a webinar on January 26th at 7 Central for the Austin, Texas chapter of SCBWI titled Indie Publishing a Picture Book. So If you want to know more about this, you can go to austin.scbwi.org and click on the events tab, which was easier than putting the big link on the screen that you'd all have to copy. So you can do that and find
Yeah.
out more
You
information
can
about
also go to indiekidsbooks.com. I write the blog, and yeah, you'll find some information there.
Great, great, great. All right. Well, this has been wonderful, Darcy. Thank you so much for your time and for
Sure.
all of your great information. I know everybody learned a lot, and we appreciate you being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye.